Hello, everyone. This is my continuation of my devotional series on the book of Hebrews. This section I will be going over today will be Hebrews 1 5 through 14. So I'm going to go ahead and read this text. For which of the angels did God ever say, "You are my son. Today I have begotten you"? Or again, "I will be his father, and he will be my son." And again, when he brings the firstborn into the world, he says, "Let all God's angels worship him." Of the angels, he says, "He makes the angels winds and his servants flames of fire." But of the Son he says, "Your throne, O God, is forever and ever, and the righteous scepter is the scepter of your kingdom. And you have loved righteousness and hated wickedness. Therefore God, your God, has anointed you with the oil of gladness beyond your companions. And in the beginning, Lord, you founded the earth, and the heavens are the work of your hands. They will perish, but you remain. They will wear out like clothing, like cloak you will roll them up, and like clothing they will be changed. But you are the same, and your years will never end. But to which of the angels has he ever said, 'Sit at my right hand, until I make your enemies a footstool at your feet'? Are not all angel spirits in the divine service sent to serve for the sake of those who inherit their salvation?" I always thought it was a bit ridiculous how many Americans are captured by the royal family. What do they even do? Do they really have any power anymore? Why does it even pertain to the US anyways? Maybe it's because they like seeing reality TV play out in front of our eyes. When we in the US hear the language of royalty, it can seem foreign to us. I can't help but think of the portrayal of King George in the musical Hamilton. For those who may not have seen it, King George is portrayed as a pompous, self-righteous dictator in the play. This is certainly how he was portrayed in American history classes that I took in grade school. America has always been seen as a land of independence and liberty. We value autonomy and freedom at all costs. For many of us, when we think of loyalty, we think of Loki's speech in the Avengers when he says this. He's in front of a crowd here with his scepter trying to rule over them. He says, "Kneel before me." I said, "Kneel." Is it not simpler? Is this not your natural state? It's not the unspoken truth of humanity that you crave subjugation. The bright lure of freedom diminishes your life's joy in a mad scramble for power, for identity. You were made to be ruled. In the end, you will always kneel. Kings are tyrants. They make us kneel, and yet, in this text, we see a Jesus who is a ruler. We see one who has authority even over the angels. In this text, we see the author of Hebrews cite the Old Testament in order to draw attention to the supremacy of Christ over the angels. Much of this text has imagery of loyalty embedded in it. The text begins with a rhetorical question. For to which of the angels did God ever say? The answer, of course, is none of them. In the Old Testament, the first Old Testament quotation comes from Psalm 2 when Hebrews says, "You are my son. Today I have become your father." Typically, when a psalm is quoted in the New Testament, the author is trying to invoke the whole psalm. Psalm 2 is a coronation psalm. When the psalm is invoked, it should immediately draw our attention to the coronation ceremony. In this case, the author of Hebrews is pointing towards the coronation of Jesus. For Hebrews, this coronation event happened when Jesus ascended to the right hand of the Father as God told him, "Sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet." This whole passage is saying that Jesus is greater than the angels because Jesus is enthroned at the right hand of the Father. For us moderns, the notions of being ruled by someone is troubling. Autonomy is the law by which we moderns live. We literally become the law unto ourselves. To be sure, some tyrants and rulers subjugate and oppress. What kind of ruler was this Jesus then? Well, the author of Hebrews quotes Psalm 45 to give us a clue. Here the psalm says, "Your throne, O God, will last forever and ever. A scepter of justice will be your scepter of your kingdom. You have loved righteousness and hated wickedness. Therefore God, your God, has set you above your companions by anointing you with the oil of joy." This Jesus rules by loving justice and hating wickedness. To see what this looks like, we need to look at the person and work of Jesus Christ. It is through the works of Jesus that we come to know the person of Jesus. It is through Christ's person that we come to know what kind of justice he produces. Christ rules by coming in flesh. He rules by giving himself over to authorities. He rules by laying down his life for the sake of the wicked. This is how Jesus rules. As Jesus says in Matthew 11, his yoke is easy and his burden is light. Jesus rules by vanquishing evil, by letting evil overtake him. Ironically, it's this humility that makes Christ king. It's a paradox. Christ gave up power in order to overtake it. This isn't how typical rulers rule. This is precisely what makes Jesus greater than the angels. Jesus has the authority over them because he was enthroned upon his death. In our modern day and age, it's less of an issue to think that the angels are greater than the person of Jesus. Instead, we think we can rule ourselves. Our authority lies in the autonomous individual. The problem is that we often make poor rulers over ourselves. It can cause a lot of anxiety to rule over yourself. Yet, the book of Hebrews shows us Jesus is a much better ruler over us than we are. His yoke is easy and his burden is light. He brings justice to the poor and the wicked. Step into this light. Hear this good news. You no longer have to be a law unto yourself. Jesus is a gentle ruler. He has already taken the law of the world upon himself to set you free from it. Thanks be to God that Christ is ruler and not ourselves.